Hello and welcome to the Three Will Podcast. This is your host Danny Ryan with my co-host Tommy Ryan here with me. Welcome, Tommy.
Good morning, Danny.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a Friday.
It is a Friday.
Usually we do this on Thursday.
Yes.
It's a Friday.
Yes, that is a true statement. I wasn't around yesterday to do this. Sock check. Let's see what you got. Okay.
How do you like me now?
Nice. Those are authentic looking.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Where'd you get those from?
From an Aztec Indian.
I love it. All right. Let's smoke the peace pipe. There's some nice shoes to go with them too. Sorry, I'll have to include some visuals with this podcast. And keep your eyes on those. I think I like them. I like them a lot. So today I wanted to talk with you about a subject that's come up on and off for us through the years, which is what note-taking product we use. And I know we've done some stuff with Evernote in the past, and we actually, 4 or 5 years ago, did some product integration with Evernote, went to their conference,
Right.
got real excited about what they're doing as a company and as a product. And then more recent histories, we've seen Microsoft really start to invest in OneNote and see its sort of with their overall philosophy of supporting all different types of devices, really starting to invest more in the product. So that leads us to this sort of ongoing, do we use Evernote? Do we use OneNote? You know, we're a big Microsoft partner, so our default answer should be at least we're looking at and have OneNote installed and are using every once in a while. But I just wanted to talk with you about sort of the Evernote versus OneNote. Let's get the whole thing kicked off with maybe are you using both today? Are you using one more today? Where do you stand with this?
I put more of my notes today in Evernote. I think if you looked at the two products today and you were starting from scratch, I think they're pretty even playing field. But kind of over the course of history, being open across devices and places to give input into the note, it was just more seamless to go Evernote. And I think you get a certain amount of history, and it creates a challenge to go back and forth.
Yeah.
So a lot of my net new stuff, as it relates to everyday work, is usually OneNote, and it's coming through how OneNote is surfacing in different areas like groups, Office 365 groups, where that's kind of the package tool. We were talking about Wiki versus OneNote versus Word the other week, and OneNote is becoming that default easy way to start tracking notes, that it just comes along with the ride. So that's starting to increase my level of usage of OneNote.
Do you use with any of the Evernote companion products at all, like Sketch? I think it is Sketch, right?
It is Sketch.
Yeah. Any of the other products that they package up with Evernote?
I use Sketch, and that's for screen capture, and that's nice because you just do the screen capture, and if you want, you can share that as a URL, or you save it out as an image and send it as an attachment to an email, and it just automatically goes into Evernote. So it's kind of a seamless experience where I capture in Sketch and it shows up in Evernote, and then I can categorize it with tags, put it in the notebook that I want to have it in. So that's probably the only tool. I use the web clipper quite a bit. So if I'm out and I see something on the web that I want to keep track of and I want to have a record of it over time, so when I'm searching through my notes, I can actually find that. I've used Evernote as web clipper.
Okay.
I think there's an equivalent in OneNote for doing that also.
Yep, there is. Then it depends on what you're using, both for a browser and also for an operating system as well. But OneNote's come pretty far with regards of doing web clipping, and interesting. And so you, Evernote for you, it's the place where you're able to store sort of almost like a long-term memory type of thing for you if you wanted to come back to
they kind of the symbol of the elephant is that memory, and it is your brain in terms of keeping track of information, and done a lot with personal productivity and looking at getting things done, and how do you integrate that with tools like Evernote, and I've made it my trusted source for things that get done, and that in OneNote, which not OneNote but Wunderlist, which makes things a challenge because I'm trying to separate what are to-do lists, and that's going into Wunderlist, and what is my brain, and kind of capturing notes and things that are more than a single line to do, but more detail, meeting notes, and just ideation. When I'm capturing ideas, it's a place that I go and I collect my thoughts within Evernote.
Yeah, I'm more of a have gone back and forth. You know me, I'm as fickle as a little girl, so I go back and forth between the two products quite often. So I know all about how do you convert your notes from one to the other. But nowadays have been trying to lean more on, partially because I see that Microsoft has been investing in OneNote and some of the integrations that it has, and they've come up. I think this had a lot to do with Evernote had a pretty big influence on, hey, Microsoft, you need to get your act together with regards to supporting different devices. Yeah. I think they really influenced them on that. Microsoft did realize that they needed to do that it wasn't just a Windows thing or a Windows Phone thing, that they needed to support all the different devices. But I've gone back and forth between the two products, and now it's been more of this is a daily conundrum with me, which is, do I put it in Wunderlist as a to-do with some notes in it, or do I put it in OneNote as just a note? And it's OneNote seems to be, for me, more of a place I'm capturing things, and maybe later on I want to come back to more like the long-term memory type of thing. I'm a bit, I don't know if you find you're this way as well, I'm a bit intimidated because I've kept a lot of notes, and some of them are relevant, some of them aren't. But every once in a while I want to go through and organize it. And I start going through it and I get a little overwhelmed with it, and I just say, I'll just come back to it later on. Yeah,
and one of the things that I've been doing inside of Evernote, and it doesn't mean that this is just an Evernote thing, it can be, I think, a OneNote thing also, which is I have 3 notebooks. One is called Action Items, the other one is Cabinet, and the other one is Completed.
Okay.
So Action Item is those things that need to have a place, need to land somewhere eventually, either or delete it because I've taken that note and put it into something else. Maybe I was crafting out an email and I wanted to just curate some ideas before sending it out in the email, or end up deleting it. If it's a to-do item that is one that I didn't track inside of Wunderlist, but it was something just a little bit more involved, then if I don't see it as a reference that's ongoing knowledge, I put it in Completed. So if I want to know that I've done this and it's done, and I don't need to search the Completed when I'm trying to find knowledge, it's just that parking spot. And then the Cabinet is anything that if I see something out on the web that I would just want to have as a reference. Well, it's not an action item. I just want to have a record of it, so I just put it in my Cabinet. And then tags, and I have tags, and I have 3 tags. One is at work, at home, and at town, which is what are things that I'm doing that are work related, home related, and then just out and about. That's not either home or work, and then continue to curate my tags. I've found that what I've liked about Evernote versus OneNote is more hierarchical, kind of the tabs and the structure that comes with OneNote. Evernote is more of organizing by tags, and you can have it in, quote, multiple places because you're tagging it. So I tag things by client name, or tag things by certain people, if they're people I work with quite often, and then by other topics that I want to go back and find, like content. And it's simpler for me to put it in kind of that one place, action items, and tag it, and then I know that if it's still in action items, I need to do something with it eventually, and then I have a priority that I'll go back and look at things based on priority and kind of work off of that stack. But I do use Wunderlist along with it. Wunderlist is the things that they have to be done. They're things that I want to keep on in the forefront of my mind. I look at it daily. Evernote, I don't put anything in Evernote that I worry about getting done very quickly. It's more of something I've got an idea. It's not fully baked yet to put on my top to-do list that I have in Wunderlist.
It's been
not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And there's a lot of what you're talking about. It's been a while since I read Getting Things Done, but some of the concepts I think you've picked up from there as well. The concept like an inbox, a dropping place for you to take action on things. The whole idea of context, I think, is what it's called. So it sounds like you're running with some of those concepts, and Evernote helps you to do that.
Right.
Yeah. One of the any issues at all with as it sounds like you've got this completed, which it smells a little bit like an archive, almost like you're done with it and you want it around for the future. Any issues with things slowing down at all in Evernote, or is it seem
no?
Still
That's
to be
amazing
speedy?
part to me is I've never seen any. After collecting notes after years and years, nothing that looks performance related, which I'm surprised. I don't know what technology is taking place in terms of keeping up with that and syncing that. I think one of the things that you talk about OneNote versus Evernote, what's separated in my mind is, to me today, and I think it has to do with my history of using note-taking tools, and I don't jump back and forth as quickly. I tend to stay there, and I camp out for a long time.
And that's what I love about you. I love your consistency.
I think historically, because I was a heavy note taker and I wanted to be across devices and I wanted it simple with tagging, having tagging across devices and simplicity was just a winner for me.
Yeah.
And then those things caught up with OneNote, and where I think OneNote kind of trumps Evernote in my mind is when it comes to business productivity. So if I have a group of people that I want to collaborate, all of the things I have in Evernote are just for me. I'm not collaborating around those things. It's my brain. And then when I want to have more of a collective brain around ideas, I'm not using OneNote. I'm not using Evernote for that. I use OneNote for that type of collaboration.
So you're distinguishing, for you distinguish, is this something that's internal just to me versus if I'm working with a group and it's a shared note. If it's more of a shared note, that's OneNote.
Right.
If it's something I'm using my personal brain, then that's really where that's the key distinguishing factor.
It is, and again, if I would start from scratch, I probably would pick one, and pick OneNote at this point based on its maturity and being across devices, and just the capabilities that it has.
How has because we're talking about note taking, but almost something that is can be indistinguishable from task, because notes have to do with typically lots of notes have to do with tasks. And we're talking a little bit about Wunderlist, and I know for us we had the introduction of Office 365 Planner, where you start and there's some notes that you can keep in there. Now my head is starting to hurt. So I guess there's a little bit of and we're starting to play around with this for folks who are listening. For this podcast, we're putting ideas about future topics that we want to cover, and that seems to be almost like a visual note-taking sort of place to show different.
It's very equivalent to, I think, Wunderlist. So Wunderlist is maybe your personal task management, and then when it becomes group task management, the lightest weight, purpose-built task management is Planner, which we're in that preview phase. Most people are not going to see Planner in Office 365. We consciously decided to get in the early preview of it, and so we're kicking the tires of it. And it is kind of the Wunderlist equivalent of web-based group task management, without going as far as doing something like Microsoft Project and Project Server.
I could really see, where the way that you're describing it, and whether you, for folks who may have, they already have a background with Evernote, continuing to stick with that, and then sort of using, especially with OneNote, where it's more of, we have a web-based version of it. It's not like something you have to have installed locally in order to work with it.
Right.
This idea of those shared notes. So it's not an either or. It's more of a, can be an and. It really is something you're using it more for. And there may be companies who've already invested in doing shared notebooks within Evernote, and that may be that they continue to go down that route, and that makes a whole lot of sense for them.
Right. And that's there, and there's a lot of, there's chat within Evernote, and there's business notebooks, and all good stuff. And if we weren't so heavily focused on Microsoft and we didn't have so much history in, using SharePoint as a platform, we would probably look into that more. But you and I have shared a business notebook just to understand the concept there. It's more of seeing where are they going with this. But I don't think it's where their bread and butter is. And if you're using something like Office 365, you don't want to confuse your users of, okay, where are we keeping this collective organizational knowledge? Where we don't encourage people to do group collaboration with Evernote here. It makes sense to do that in Office 365 and OneNote when it's a group type activity.
So I think for folks who are looking at this, it may be, hey, if you continue to use Evernote, if it's working, I think part of it is it working for you? If it is working for you. And I don't see that by making the move over to OneNote, it's not like there's going to be significant differences and features. You have you talk about tagging and some of the stuff that you're able to do in Evernote. I think most of the stuff, there's equivalents to it within OneNote. But really probably starting to look at, does this note have to do with a group of people? And if it does, and you're using Office 365, then there's a pretty good chance OneNote's going to be what you want to use.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And then for people like me who who will switch back and forth and change their mind on a weekly basis, there are also some tools. I know Microsoft has started to put out tools for converting from like Evernote to OneNote, and there's some third-party stuff that's out there as well, where if it makes enough sense for you to make the migration, then you may want to do that. But really, in a lot of ways, I see this as a personal preference. It's not. I don't know if I would distinguish that there's a clear winner between the two. Both companies are, great companies. If Evernote, if it's something you've been used to using, then maybe continue to stick with it. OneNote, if you're, again, shared notes and looking at that as sort of what you're using as a company.
Right. And especially if you're brand new and to kind of a note-taking tool and being disciplined about that. If you're on Office 365, you really need to look into OneNote because it is a good launching point to getting into notes that can be personal notes and company-based notes.
I've started in the on our intranet, which is on Office 365, like in the marketing section, I have a marketing notebook.
Right.
That if I'm doing little things like I want to say, here's how you update a blog post. I'm just putting it into that notebook because someone can search for it. It's easy. It needs to be updated over time. It's almost like I see it a replacement for a wiki of what I used to in latter days used to put in a wiki. Could just put it into a OneNote notebook. That seems to make a lot of sense for my workflow. Cool. Anything else? Any other advice that you have for folks? That sounds like you're going to continue down the path of Evernote and then continue down the sort of using each product for what you feel like it works best for.
Yeah, and I'm also the mindset of understanding what the best of breed is doing, and when you're invested with notes. I think you go to a certain point, I'm just used to that workflow. So and it's good to see what's there and be able to make a compare and contrast when organizations are looking at trying to make a decision. Where do I put my notes? We're more informed based on experiencing the best of breed out there.
It's funny because I think of this. I think I think of OneDrive and Dropbox as being very similar. And where Dropbox is very purpose built, sort of does what it does it very extremely well. OneDrive sort of is a alternative to it, has its edges and sort of. But I also think with a lot of these, where I'm ending up is I use both of them. I'm at the point where I'm not trying to say, oh, I have to use one or the other. It just makes sense for me to use both of them. You see that as sort of maybe what I guess for us is really what I think is interesting is maybe for some of our larger customers who almost have to decide on one versus the other. That gets into a much more, probably more complicated question.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with what your IT group is going to support as a standard and what gets the job done.
Great, thank you for this. It was nice just sitting down and talking with you about sort of where you are with all of this as well. I hope for folks who are listening, feel free to leave a comment about where you are with this whole process of using Evernote and or OneNote. I hope some of these, what we're doing internally has helped you out as well. But thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this today, and feel free to follow up with us if you're looking to migrate to Office 365. We've been doing a lot of migrations for customers who want to make the move, especially complex migrations. But thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. Thank you, Tommy, for joining me.
You're welcome, Danny.
And we'll talk to you next week, okay?
All right.
We'll have to think up a new subject, and we'll talk to you then. Thank you so much, Tom. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.